Kia ora and welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod as we get ready to head into the Rugby Championship. Man, we like this time of year, don't we? The All Blacks, 2 games against Argentina. Plenty to talk about exactly who's going to be in that team, who's going to be at fullback, who's going to be at halfback. Lots of conversations to have around that. The Springboks, of course, are in Australia. How are the Aussies going to go? Steamrolled by the Welsh forwards. How are they going to cope against the Boks pack over the next couple of weeks? Joe Schmidt, I'm sure, will have some answers for that over the next week or so. And of course, the Gilbert Players Sport Ball. To your questions on the email at aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and of course the comments as well. And you know the guys who are with me on this show. James Parsons, great to have you in studio.
No arms out selfie this week.
No. Where in the world is James Parsons going to be? He's here.
He's here. Auckland studio.
Yeah, damn.
And grateful to be here.
Yeah, very good. And of course, walking straight off the training field and look at what's behind.
You've done me dirty there, Bryn. You have done me dirty.
Goodness me. Bryn Hall, 16-year-old Bryn Hall, and a 35-year-old James Parsons?
No, I'd say that based on that jersey, probably 29, 30.
Yeah.
Well, hey, lads. It's also great to be here. I think there's myself, is it there? Yeah, there he is. Hey, Bryn, how are you, mate? Mate, Jipper, great to be able to see you, and I'm obviously missed you so much that I just thought we had to get you in the visuals for the whole duration of this podcast. So, now good to be back in. Just looking back at that photo, very, very young Bryn. I don't even think I had a moustache or any form of facial hair at that age. So
probably the same year that you said you'd take that one from 45 on the angle, and I backed you.
It actually was, Jipper. That's the funny thing. It was.
Will I ever let that go? Probably not.
No. If it had gone over,
I would have been singing. I would have still been singing his praises. Yeah. He knows that.
Just looking at that picture, actually, with the headgear on, did you go through your career relatively lucky in that no one recognised you without the headgear on? So you missed out on half of the autographs?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, it did work as a little cover for who I am. So many people would be like, "Oh, no, you're not. That's not. You're not James Parsons." Sometimes I got told I was Nick Mayhew, and they're like, "You don't say you're James Parsons, you're Nick Mayhew." I'm like, "What?" I literally am James Parsons.
There's people telling that story now. Geez, I know that Nick Mayhew. He's hard case.
Yeah.
He's trying to run himself.
He tried to run it all night. He was James Parsons.
Fair enough. It's like when you watch the golf and the golfers have got hats on, and like Jim Furyk, he's completely bald, and with the hat on, he looks 20 years younger. He takes the hat off, and you're like, who the hell are you? Yeah.
Well, that's the reason I normally wear it in interviews, is to hide the receiver.
Nah, she's looking good, mate.
Looking good. I flew to Turkey as well, guys, just to let you know.
The rug doctor over here's gone well.
I didn't.
With all of that said, we've got some rugby to chat as well this weekend. In particular, the All Blacks v Argentina, where we want to start. Now, there's lots of questions about what will happen through these first 2 test matches, one in Wellington, one in Auckland, especially seeing as there were teams that ran out against England, got over the line, and then, they'd mix things up against Fiji. And at that point, especially at fullback, we saw Beauden Barrett return to the starting team. Now, I suppose the question is, Stephen Perofeta, Beauden Barrett, and the return of Will Jordan is such a biggie. We know the coaches love him. We know even if he didn't have that warm-up game the other day, the coaches probably would have been tempted to chuck him in either on the wing or at fullback because he's Will Jordan. So where do we go here?
There's so many ways to look at it, and I'll go with where I'm thinking is Bodie made such a big impact off the bench and then played well starting. You have to think, for consistency and trying to build combinations, especially looking towards South Africa, which I know we've talked about at length, and that's no disrespect to the Wallabies, but I suppose that's our next challenge after Argentina. You have to think he starts, but in saying that, and we say this all the time, one, yes, I know they love him, but from a standpoint of, is he ready to go, are you better to put him out there? And if things don't go right, you can slip Bodie, and you've seen that impact from the bench. Or tiring bodies, Will Jordan get some confidence back off the bench? I think that's a better fit. Bodie's going really well. Don't strip him of that confidence. Don't strip Bodie of that confidence, and then allow Will the ability to be his disruptive best late in the game against tiring bodies. That's personally how I'd see it going.
to just go a little bit deeper around Jipper's point, I think if you're going to have one guy coming off the bench, I'd rather have a Beauden Barrett coming off the bench. I think that he has shown, not only in the English series when he came off the bench, but just in time, him coming off the bench is probably a little bit better than Will. I think Will was pretty much, don't know a lot of the times that he's been able to come off the bench. So I think starting Will, and if it doesn't end up happening very well or he's a little bit underdone, you then have the ability to be able to bring Bodie on in that 23 role, which he's done so well. So I think they will go with Will starting and then being able to bring Bodie on with that luxury that he has had, being able to play off the bench really well. But yeah, it's a hard discussion because I think as well, Bodie is warranted to be able to be selected at fullback, but whether they see that dynamic of being able to bring him off the bench might be a bit better than Will coming off the bench. So for that, I'm going to think Will's going to start in that space.
Oh, it's good to see our Blues Crusader rivalry back. Oh, I knew it was coming.
Okay, let's strip the parochialism out of it. The difference between what Beauden Barrett does and what Will Jordan does as a player. What are Beauden's strengths in comparison to Will, and what are Will's strengths in comparison to Beauden?
Well, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Bryn's played a lot more with Will, but I do think Bodie at fullback is someone who can tactically kick, contestable kick, and probably looks at that kick first, and then looks to inject himself in that running game once they're in that phase play shape, whereas I think Will's a run first sort of guy. I'm not saying that he doesn't have the ability to kick, but I definitely think what we've seen of him, he's a run first guy, and then in that phase play, I think he's always looking for that chip out the back. We've seen it when Bodie was at 10, that beautiful chip that led to one of his tries against Australia. He is all out attack. And I suppose if we look at potentially what we have seen early on, they are all out attack, and the Crusaders coaching group that had Will is very similar to what we have now in the All Blacks. So yeah, I think there's that relationship and that trust that he can do a job if he does start. I'll credit who I stole this from. I was listening to an interview with Rod Kafer, and he was talking about the Wallabies, and I don't want to go down this because I can talk about the Wallabies later, but he spoke about the I suppose the Marshall, Mertens, McDonald relationship with the Crusaders, the Gregan, Larkham, Joe Roth relationship at the Brumbies, and he goes, I just don't understand why rugby's gone away from building these solid combinations through Super Rugby teams into the international rugby that allows them that success. And that's the only thing that challenged my thinking around this. Initially, I was like, yeah, I think they'll give Will a crack. You have to, you know, like he's definitely part of their plans. He's definitely probably who they wanted at fullback, you know, to start. But then you're like, well, you know, what impact does that have on Damien? You know, and we really need that combination, that 9-10. We've got disruptions at 9.
Yep.
Damien's a solid.
Yep.
Bodie's done really well. Do we fiddle with that?
Yeah. Okay, well, if that's the case, if you think about how similar Damien McKenzie is to Richie Mo'unga, if you're going to be playing Will Jordan at fullback, Bryn, are those two similar enough and playing within a similar enough structure for Will to fit in absolutely seamlessly into the way that a 10-15 relationship might work at All Black level?
It's hard to say because I think, you know, Will probably hasn't played fullback for the All Blacks, you know, so he has played a lot of time at the Crusaders, and he's able to obviously play well in that system. But, you know, and the fact that he's coming back from a nine-month injury as well, you've got to factor that to be able to get his continuity and be able to get runs on the board. So you'd just have to think through the messages that Razor has been saying that they see Will as a fullback. He's a fullback who can play winger, which is probably a little bit different with what Fozzie was thinking. We had with having that Richie and Beauden double pivot role. So with knowing that the South Africans are coming in a 2-test series, you've got to be able to give Will an opportunity to be able to get runs on the board, and then I guess maybe find his rhythm going into those 2 test matches in South Africa.
Of course he hasn't had time off the bench. Like, the guy's a freak. Like, he hasn't, you know. So I understand that point, but it's like, you also need to look after him. Give him some confidence against, you know, at that lesser intensity. I'm not saying it's you know, it's probably more that Super Rugby final intensity late in the game versus that international rugby intensity that first sort of 40, 50 minutes. So is there an element of, you know, get him some confidence and also not ripping Bodie's confidence away that, you know, that he's earned the right to sort of to start?
Will Jordan obviously has been an outstanding fullback at Super Rugby level. Bryn, is his communication / kicking game something that's simply overlooked because his running game is so spectacular? Is the rest of his game just overshadowed by it?
Oh, I think so. Like, I know, playing with Will for a lot, his game now and his intelligence is really on the job. Like, his ability to understand the game, he's heavily involved when it comes to the attack meetings, understanding of what you can try and manipulate and how you want to beat teams, whether that's through attack or defence. So his game knowledge is right up there. And I think also his communication skills are very, very good. Like his micro comms in terms of what's required. We talk around Bodie. You've played with Bodie a lot and how important that is. So his communication skills are very, very good. So I think just for the fact that he hasn't had an opportunity to do it at the international level, and I guess that's probably the one thing that you do have to question, is that he has been one of the best wingers in the world when being able to play wing, but there is a little bit when it does come to the international stage. Yes, you can have confidence with being at the Crusaders and having success there, but I guess at the international level it might be a little bit more different. So to answer your question, Ross, very, very good in terms of game management side, understanding situationally what's required and the communication skills. And probably I know one thing that Bodie does really, really well is that his attacking kicks and has been able to kick off both feet is a massive benefit in Bodie's game. So that's probably one thing. If they want to go to more of a kicking game and being able to use the attacking kicks or being able to play off that 15, Bodie, you'd have to say, arguably, would have a little bit of a leg up when it comes to there with Will.
Will Jordan's going to be a world-class fullback at international level. There's no question. I think he'll be great whenever that opportunity comes, if this weekend or whatever. He's not going to play a bad game. I don't have a question on that. But it's also, we do have to learn from the past, and we played a lot in that loss against Argentina and Christchurch. And a lot of penalties, they were great at the breakdown and they kicked them. So that discipline and that game plan, potentially that kicking game is massive. So I don't even think it's a skill set thing. Like, they're both international quality. It's just what's the coach's plans towards, I suppose, the rest of the year and the rest of the calendar and where that fits. And I know I'm sort of just going against everything we just sort of spoke about in terms of what deciphers this decision. But either way, the reality is it's going to be one of them. And either way, I think they'll both perform.
And if one of them is Beauden Barrett starting, I mean, there's no reason why Will Jordan couldn't also start. He's played so much Test football on the right wing.
Now, I've thought about this as well.
Yeah.
How do you drop Severus? And then obviously Mark Talia's had a week out and Caleb's gone extremely well. Maybe they do look at it as a great way to bring him back and give Sever a rest, because he comes into that conversation.
Because Sever's played 3 in a row and he put in a lot of running, didn't he?
Yeah, so potentially that is an option, but then there's the option of Caleb and Mark. I go back to, what are the coaches' plan? Where do they see these players? Okay, they see Will as their fullback. Then we need to get him some runs. And then there's also the aspect, and this is a cruel part of professional sport, and it is something you consider, is if you do too good a job off the bench, you remain on the bench.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's sort of silly, but that ability to have the impact and what Bodie did in Auckland, geez, I've just gone round in circles, haven't I? I'm just trying to get all the information out there. Classic rabbit hole Parsons, but. They may see that, and that may be the discussion. Yeah. That may be the end to have the discussion with Bodie is, man, you changed the game for us under pressure. You won us that test match that we were potentially going to lose if you didn't have that impact off the bench.
So we're all agreed that Will Jordan's going to start.
He would probably say, well, I wouldn't have been in that position if I started.
So you're changing what you think? So Bodie's coming off the bench, or?
I think Bodie should stay there, and I think we should look after Will Jordan and bring him in. That's what I think. Yeah. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not.
Now, some things changed over the last couple of weeks at halfback. Finlay Christie was obviously dropped. And then you've got Cortez Ratima, who's made a big impression. Noah Hotham has come in instead of Finlay Christie after playing a small amount of football against Fiji. And then, of course, there's TJ Perenara, who has got all that experience and had such a wonderful Super Rugby season. So where do you go? It's not like Aaron Smith's there anymore and you know who number one is. It's hard to understand exactly who the number one is at the moment. Bryn, from what I've seen, I'm imagining that Cortez Ratima is now number one. Is that where you stand?
I think with Cortez, I think Jip, you know, as a young guy, sometimes it's really good to be able to get that continuity and being able to, I guess, understand what test footy's like. And I think being able to play in New Zealand against an Argentinian team is probably a good time to introduce Cortez to that starting role, with knowing that if it does go south or something does happen, you've got TJ that can come off the bench. And on the other side, you obviously can start TJ, and Cortez can come and play that role like he did against the English. But if I was to pick right now, if TJ wasn't injured, I would have gone him. But I think with him coming back, you can always start Cortez and then being able to then bring TJ to finish off the game if it doesn't go the direction of how the game is going.
So on that basis, I'm going to stick to the Rod Cather theory. And I think Cortez has got such a great relationship with Damien.
Yeah.
I just think he starts. Get him and Damo going, running hot. And worst case scenario, it doesn't go well, you bring TJ on.
Mm.
They're about to go to South Africa in 3 weeks' time for, possibly the hardest task in rugby, which is 2 tests in a row in South Africa. So you'd have to think that giving those 2 guys, Bryn, more time together to be ready for that at test level.
We've obviously got 2 test matches against Argentina at home, which is nice, but I think, look, man, they must have a lot of trust to be able to give them the opportunity, which in, probably in two games' time, you got the hardest task of being able to go over, try win a series over in South Africa. So, yeah, get them going get runs on the board, and thankfully they've got TJ who's back from injury, who has all that experience, and if they feel that they haven't got what they've wanted out of the young nines, you can always bring back TJ and being able to put them in those big test matches with the South Africans coming up not too long.
The other position that there's been so much chat about over the last couple of weeks is centre. What will happen there? Billy Proctor looked very good against Fiji. Obviously, it's a different kind of game to the England game, so I'm imagining that Ioane would have looked very good against Fiji as well. Have you seen enough from Billy Proctor? Have they seen enough from Billy Proctor to warrant another start this week instead of Rieko Ioane?
Of course they've seen enough. His performance against Fiji, but over a long period of time, Billy Proctor's played well. And then people could argue, old Rod Cather over here, there's a hell of a connection between Beauden Barrett and Billy Proctor.
Yeah.
They've spent a lot of time together. But there's also a pretty impressive relationship that's between Beauden Barrett and Rieko Ioane. I don't know what this thing is about Rieko. He has not played poorly.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it. And for me, he is the centre for the All Blacks. And Billy will force his way in there through multiple opportunities throughout the season. But currently, you have to believe Rieko is the number 1 centre.
It's pretty simple. I think what it comes down to is that people love to see Rieko Ioane tearing down the side in space, and they don't get to see that as much, and they don't really care about the detail quite as much, Bryn, of the other things. What they want to see is the fastest guy in the All Blacks running really fast in space. I think that's what it comes down to. It's that simple.
Well, the fastest guy in the All Blacks is pretty impressive defensively to shut down opportunities.
Yeah.
And also chances arm defensively, and then have the ability to get back and cover. But that's not flash and pretty. Also, I just think he cops a hell of a lot for no reason. But I'm a massive fan of Billy's as well. And Bryn and I have spoken for a number of years now, as he is one of the best line runners on attack that creates opportunities for others and himself. He's an international centre. So again, it's similar to this Beauden Barrett, Will Jordan situation. I don't think they're going to go wrong either way because Geordie's at 12. Yeah. Both of them have a great relationship with him. And if in their eyes, in the style that they want to play as coaches, Rieko doesn't fit that, well then, they have every right to change that.
Yeah.
But the way I look at the game and what I've seen Rieko do against a very strong English side, and the selflessness he showed in that Blues game plan to get them a title. Bryn?
I love having you back in studio, mate. Awesome. Look, I think I agree with some of the points you're talking around, Jip. I think Rieko has bided his time nicely. I think he is the incumbent centre when it comes to the All Blacks at the moment. But I think as well, the styles, in terms of if there's a different change in styles with what we talk around with Beauden Barrett and Will Jordan, different styles, different coaches have different ideas. But I think what he has done through the time that he has been at the All Blacks, he has performed and he's been consistent. So I think what Billy has done, he has put Rieko on notice. And that's not just when it comes to centres, it comes to any position. When a guy's playing well, it lights a fire underneath you, knowing that there's a guy right behind you. I remember Ronan O'Gara always said one thing that always stuck with me, and this, I don't know, other people might not think this, but, you can always go, 30, 40 test matches or 30, 40 games in a row playing really, really well. All it takes is one or two performances where you question yourself in terms of, was that a good game? And then it opens up the conversation with coaches around maybe trying to see maybe this other player can do it right. So I'm not saying that Rieko hasn't been playing bad, but what it has done is that with Billy playing really, really well, it's probably amplified that Rieko now wants to go out there and perform really well with there's a bit of competition with Billy behind. So I think they start Rieko with his combination with Geordie. I know Geordie and Billy have a great relationship at the Hurricanes, but Geordie and Rieko have a great relationship in the All Blacks in terms of being able to get runs on the board together. So I think Rieko starts, but Billy Proctor is napping at him at his heels with his performances at Fiji, against Fiji. And I think probably in again, like I talked about with the halfbacks, he's probably doing everything right in camp and making all every post a winner when it comes to be able to try and training day to day as an All Black.
Billy and him do play differently. They've got different strengths and weaknesses. So if there is a change, then you'd have to think it will come next week. But I just don't think that changes this week. Happy to be proven wrong, though, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but and also we talked to when you're jet setting, but around with England in terms of sorry mate,
I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough to get a Japanese deal, so I had to jump on a few junkets.
The thing is, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you will always be on the wall at North Harbour Stadium.
Hey, but it doesn't matter where I am in the world, I still front up, not like old mate when he's got to nip off somewhere or he's got a camp or a Mad Monday or something, always front up.
You do that. You are right there in that point, Jill.
Anyway, back to the centre discussion.
Back to the centre discussion. One thing that I really did enjoy about Billy on the week when he played Fiji, and this is probably, you got to take it with a grain of salt in terms of what the Fijians gave to us, but his distribution skills under pressure were really good. And I think against the Argentinians, I remember last year when we did play them, they have a massive amount of line speed pressure. So Rieko has seen his pitches when it came to the England game, and they probably collectively as an attacking group wanted to be able to say, how can we get that ball to space? And would have had solutions around that, probably with the notion of knowing that the Argentinian teams are going to be very, very similar. So I think Rieko, in terms of getting that ball on the edge, whether that's a kick pass or it's a little hands to be able to get that ball into space, that we probably saw against English was really hard to get around them. It'll be a point, I think, that Rieko, if he can get those little subtle touches, the ball to the edge, like I saw Billy in that Fijian game, I think it sets up Rieko really, really nicely because he's really good defensively in terms of his speed and being able to make decisions, and the attacking side, when he gets a one-on-one or has that space, he's world-class in that area. So the subtle skills to get that ball away is something that I'll be looking forward to seeing from Rieko in those outsides this weekend.
I did a bit of a dive into Rieko Ioane's passing game last week because I was really interested in, to see what the facts actually were. And it was interesting against England. He did not pass a ball to a winger once. Now, I don't think that's a slight on Rieko because he was never in a position in any of those highlights to pass a ball to a winger.
And they also used Bodie out the back a lot.
Yeah. More often than not, a Rieko pass
running him down
back inside to a supporting runner who was going to get over the gain line and let the continuity carry on. So it is like they're not giving him the chance to show that thing that no one else has that he has.
And that's an important point, Ross, because it's not just on Rieko or a centre in any position. That's if you're getting shut down, your outside should be able to say, look, mate, they're bringing a massive line speed. Hold your feet a touch. I'll come a little bit closer to you so we can get those ball away. So have you been able to go have the conversations to be able to, whether it's a kick pass or hold your depth a little bit, I'll come a little bit closer to you. Now, they probably possibly had those solutions. I think it's more of an incentive now. They know that line speed pressure. They saw it against the English. They're going to see it against Argentina. And so, the coaches and everybody, hopefully they're all aligned in terms of being able to find the solutions to get around the line speed defence, which is going to be happening against the Argentinians and the South Africans for the next month of rugby.
But I think if you look at it, Stephen Perifeta, his set-up try for Artie, that ability to get that fullback time and space out the back is clearly a style they want. And we talked about Will Jordan, suits him, obviously suits Bodie, what we saw against England off the bench. So potentially that centre role was there for that little chip kick, little dinky chip kick over, or, relaying the comms from the winger for the crossfield kick and so forth. So, but again, I think, we have a different coaching group and they clearly have a different style of play. And the question is, does the game still fit? Yeah. And how quick can there be that adjustment to, make the case that he remains at 13?
So from that conversation, it sounds like maybe Billy Proctor's game might suit the current setup slightly better?
The only reason I say I can't answer that currently is I just haven't seen enough footage. I don't have enough understanding of what that style is.
Obviously, been with a lot of those coaches, and this is going off a little bit. Like I think what a Jack Goodhue, and he's a different. Obviously, he's not here, but the subtle skills that Jack had was really massive in terms of why the Crusaders were so successful. And so I think you're going to see our centres probably in this next 3 years leading into World Cup. It's going to be a massive part of being able to be a centre or a second five in this group.
So the next step of this conversation, because we haven't talked enough about this yet, is that if you do choose Billy Proctor and you look at the wingers that we've got and you think about the fact that there is absolutely nothing in the world that can replace out and out top speed like Rieko Ioane has, like in the conversation for fastest rugby player in the world, do you then just find a way to get him on the field?
Potentially. I don't know.
He's a good winger.
He's a great winger.
And I think even on that as well, they're not afraid. Razor's definitely not afraid to make the big call in terms of, like, you know, if you've done a lot for the club,
Just need to look at Crocker.
I was just going to use that. I was just going to use that example. Like 202 games for the Crusaders, and like it was the last game, and you know, obviously it was coming off the bench, but you know, he made that decision based around what was best for the team, and it's a hard discussion to have. So it doesn't matter if you're an experienced All Black, you played 100 Test matches, or you're a debutant or 3 or 4 Test matches. Whatever Razor thinks that is best for the team, he's not afraid to be able to have those conversations and make the best decision for the team.
But I go back to all those decisions are based on performance. And that decision, as we saw in his doco, was about a penalty. Yeah. And we just couldn't afford to have that penalty. That's why he made the decision. So the only way you can see, I suppose, Billy getting in the 13 jersey is, because we don't know the game plan, is if there were mistakes made in that England series in the centre position. And that'll become clear when they name the team.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this selection because it's going to be...
Well, look how hard it is.
Yeah.
But those are the conversations... Like, honestly, it's a good thing that we're having these conversations. Like God knows how long we've spent. Normally I have to go down rabbit holes, just to fill the air, but, like, we're into it here.
Yeah. Those are quality rabbit holes.
Sometimes a little obscure. But...
High quality rabbit holes. Okay, the next question, Jip, I'm interested to hear kind of a bit of a background from you on this. Our next question comes from Paul Wilkes via email. Paul, thank you for this question, and we'll give you the Player Sport Gilbert Ball as well. I'll get that out to you in the next week or so. A bit of an insight. You're in the All Blacks this week. It's Monday. You've got a test match on Saturday. What does a typical week look like for a player Monday through Sunday, and how do you build towards it through day by day by day?
Yeah, I suppose I'll just use my own experience because I don't want to sort of cross over the lines there of what currently happens, but not a lot's different, to be honest. Not a lot's different from Super Rugby. If you've got the Saturday game, your Monday's your review day, get your learning in, get your clarity in for what you're moving to next week. Bit of set piece stuff, and then you're naturally going to have, I suppose, your potential off-field work on areas, whether that might be mental skills. There's also promotional stuff. Tuesday,
so not as much time on the field on a Monday.
It's
your learning day.
So it's like on the field at sort of 50%, and it's not going over what you did wrong. It's okay, what are our changes moving in? Like, you've got to acknowledge early on, okay, what didn't go well? So what are we going to change? What are our key focuses against this opposition? And then you go and walk those changes through.
But at that point, you don't know who's playing.
No.
Yeah.
And then you walk through potential line-out changes. So you've got that ability that night to really understand, I suppose, what you need to know and what your roles are in that line-out, so that you come Tuesday to be able to, I would say, implement it at 80%.
Faster.
Yeah, probably like 80%. Then you have your day off, and then Tuesday's like a team bonding function. Wednesday you have your day off, which would normally be golf or going out and sightseeing, or if you're at home, going back and seeing family or family coming to you. Thursday's your big day. Again, you'll do a lot of clarity stuff. You'll go up and you'll run through it at pace in the morning, and then she's almost test match from what I understand, my experience is Steve wanted to run that at say 120% of test match. You're going. You're having to make decisions fast. They're coming at you hot. I can't see it being any different in this current environment. And then Fridays, obviously, Boks down, captain's run, bit of promotional stuff, get out within the community, and Saturdays, game day.
Yeah.
And if you're not playing, which I got used to, you normally do more promotional stuff on Saturday.
Yeah. So, Bryn, from your experience with Razor aligns pretty much with what Jibba's experiences were in the All Blacks?
Yeah, pretty much. And again, I'm not too sure how they run it there, but just I'll use my example with Razor. Your Monday, pretty similar to what Jibba's talking about as your learning day, would be your attack structures and whatnot, the changes. Your Tuesday, you'd be more like implementing that at a higher speed, the 80% Jibba's touched on.
You find out that morning whether you're playing or not on Tuesday morning?
For us, it was a Monday. We'd actually get told on the Monday. We'd be told on the Monday, but I think it might be for the All Blacks, it might be a bit different the Tuesday, possibly. I'm not too sure. So that's what the Tuesday would look. You'd have your day off. Your Thursday would usually be your D-Day. So Tuesday and Monday and Tuesday would be predominantly attack, maybe layering a little bit on the Tuesday, like with the defence mindset might be. You'd come in on the Thursday, very similar to your day one of your attack. Your clarity be a little bit slower pace. Seeing the pitches, you'd see probably the pitches in the morning in the analysis room, and then you go outside and do it on the field at a little bit higher speed. And then, like Jib said, on that Thursday, after that kind of defence part of the training's done on the Thursday, you're in your scenario base where it's high intensity, and you're almost trying to replicate it faster than you would in a game. So it's just trying to get you, I guess, simulated to play at a high speed and being able to do it, I guess, more at the top echelon, like almost, it's not even possible to play at that speed, but you're training at it, right? So that's what it will be. And then your Friday is your captain's run, and then your promotional stuff that you'd have on a Friday as well.
From being a journalist covering the All Blacks over years, when you're on tour with them, the great perk on tour was that Steve Hansen would allow you to come and watch Thursday training. Cameras off, but you could sit there and you could watch Thursday training, whereas through the week you were allowed the 10, 15 minutes at the start or the end of training to get your shots, and then you're turfed. Get out of here. The stuff that's about to happen now is commercially sensitive. Like, no one's allowed to find out what's going on. But when they allowed you that on tour, that chance to look in and see how things work, it always intrigued me. Like when you said scenario-based stuff and how hard they'd be pushing. Hansen would be in the middle, whistle in hand, saying, you stuff that up, line out back there again, go. And then they would run it again and they'd run it again. And, I always found it really interesting to see how hard he went at that point.
But it's also, he's a smart man because he would try and get you in that frustrated space, so you'd do something right and he'd blow you up. Yeah. And it's like, what? Or are you like, okay, sweet, next job?
Yeah.
So it's trying to create the ability that it's not always going to go your way. A ref might see it differently and it's not a forward pass. Get to your next job. We don't have time to argue. It's not going to change. Get over it. Move on. So he'd try and test out that mental game a lot within that Thursday training, more than just physical. It looks just physical, but a lot of it's mental.
Coaches can probably train it how they want it to go. So, like, you could be doing everything right, but they might say they want the ref, if they bring a ref that comes in and say, I want you to blow 4 penalties, even if they're not offside. So then you're getting players thinking that, right, we've done doing everything right, that's not a bad call. But sometimes in games, you've got to simulate that you're not going to get all the calls from the ref. So you've then got to be able to adapt on the run, having those conversations and being able to go on the run, because that scenario base is all determined to be able to be really fast and you can't think. So as leaders, it's really important to be able to understand what's happening, but then also being able to get the group to drive, be able to be next task, process driven, to then be able to go and execute under pressure. And you don't always get it right. And Jib, I found sometimes as well, when it didn't go all right, it was actually a really good preparation side to be able to have the conversations off the field, knowing that you didn't get things right, and then you went a little bit deeper with your preparation side, having the conversations to then, I guess, perform going out on a Saturday. Sometimes I used to think, like, if we train too well on a Thursday, it was a false security and that we've done everything off, and boys kind of just fall off a little bit thinking that the week's done. Sometimes it was always good to have a little bit of edge, knowing that we probably didn't train well on that Thursday. And that came back to the guys that are playing as an England or as a Fiji for that week, really setting the tone with how they were able to perform in training.
Steve is the best man manager. Like, his ability to know his players individually and what they need to get the very best out of them on Saturday. Do they need a hug? Do they need a rocket? Do they need the silent treatment? Do they need a little bit more reps? Mate, he was incredible. It was no different like, team naming, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't matter. You know, using me as an example, he let me know I was debuting against Scotland straight after the England test because he knew I needed time to process it, get my head in the game, so I arrived Monday ready for business. Yeah. You know, and if someone needed to be dropped, needed to be early, you know, and so forth. So his ability to understand what each individual needed to get the best out of them was superb. And he was different to people, but you knew his heart was in the right place because he knew you, and he always let you know. He always let you know he cared about you. Yeah. You know, so it's a little bit easier when someone gives you that feeling to get harsh feedback or positive feedback and so forth, because you know it's coming from a place of care versus a place of I'm in charge, place of power.
Once you've had that feedback, what are the protocols around what you do with it? You know what I mean? Like, obviously that feedback is for you, not necessarily for everybody else. But we're human beings. We want to talk with our friends. We want to process things. We want to go through things and understand what it might mean or what it might not mean, especially for a young player. How do you go about sort of guarding what they've said to you or processing what they've said to you?
No, you don't guard it because you need people to help you change it. And you work in individual operation units, which we call IOUs, and it's about discussing with your peers how you can implement it. You've got to action it. You don't remain in the All Blacks if you think you're perfect. Yeah. You're not. You're going to make mistakes every week. You've got work-ons. You've got your big rocks to always sharpen. You know, don't just focus on the 1%ers. You've got to sharpen your big rocks. You've got to sharpen the 99% because the 99% can't dip because that's got to remain. That's what got you there. 1% you've still got to sharpen as well, and you're going to need people to work on that. So it's about actioning it, putting a plan in place and executing that plan. You're there because you can do that. You're not learning that there. But the way it's done will be different for someone who's, say, in my instance, debuting against Scotland, and the style of communication or the way I'm maybe assisted to plan or who I should go to or directed versus someone who's experienced, this is what you need to work on, go do it.
So he might say to you, look, you're playing, go have a chat with Kevi Mialamu and 100%. He'll help you through the next couple of days before the team is named so you can process this in the right way.
Something to that effect.
Yeah, right.
Or if you've got any questions, get to chrono now.
Yeah.
Don't wait, now.
Yeah, get on with it.
Pretty much. And if you don't action things, you're going to get left behind. In professional sports ruthless, you have to innovate, you have to evolve. There's just no choice. You know, we talked about, you know, Bodie before, evolving his game. That's why he's played so many tests. It's no different. Will Jordan's going to be a different player in 10 years, but he'll still be there. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just can't sit still because people have got so much tape on you. The moment you sit still, it's just you become too predictable.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got through to the end of Saturday. Now Sunday before Monday gets into the review. What is, if you're playing a Saturday test match or a Saturday big game, what does a Sunday look like for you?
It probably depends.
Grabbing a laptop.
Yeah. From my experience, it probably depends on the personality you are and what is best for you. Intense critters like myself and Bryn, we want to know what went right and what went wrong so that we can make a plan on that Sunday. Other guys just need to step back to be able to step back in fresh and be in a mental state. It also depends on the result. 9 times out of 10, Sundays will be brutal if you've had a good one.
All right.
To keep the fire in the belly, don't you rest on your laurels. You have a big loss, it might be just arm round how are we going to find our way out of this? Yeah. And almost that sort of let's plan together. And there's obviously commercial responsibilities and so forth.
So brutal is a brutal conversation though, because I'm imagining you're going to be doing ice baths and
It's brutal and in the shed straight after. Yeah. Don't think, you know, you always celebrate the small ones. Yeah. But don't think we can switch off for a second. Everyone's coming for us.
Especially a game that not that you're favoured to win. You just know if your team hasn't had a good performance or yourself individually, you just know Sunday or straight after the game, you know it's coming, right? I think being able to have a high-performing environment, which the All Blacks do, whether they win sometimes by 30, 40 points, that coaching group or just the group in general will be able to know that, man, we didn't perform to where we needed to be. We know we're going to get one coming in the review system. So, and I think that's what makes the All Blacks so good. Like, obviously, having experience to the extent what Jipper and that, but hearing from all the boys and that kind of stuff is that that group will not rest on their laurels. They will know every single day, how do we get better? What's the solutions of like how can we make this week better? They might have had a perfect week, had a great performance against South Africa or Argentina, but they're like, right, how do we get better? How do we stay ahead? So that ability to be one step ahead, I think, is really important. And I think with that coaching group and even the All Blacks as well in general, that's been a constant theme with how they've been able to stay at the top for such a long period of time.
But just to go back after a loss, it's not about cuddling to be like, oh, it's all right, it doesn't matter. It's about how can we get us between Saturday at 9:30 when we're in the sheds and you're feeling dreadful to on Monday coming in open versus defensive. So it's about creating that learning environment. You don't want people to walk in on Monday morning defensive and not open to learning and being like, oh, it's his fault. You want them to be like, okay, look in the mirror. Each individual look in the mirror, even the guys that didn't play. How did we not get this performance? What can we all do better? So that you step into that Monday ready to learn, ready to improve and ready to go out and get the job done. Because you don't need to create any, gunga, as I call it, like
Gunga.
Gunga, like, well, that's what my old man always said, get some guts in you, like you want to improve. There is no need to get that fire in the belly. You want to, so it's almost getting you in a framework that you don't over try, but you're also not defensive. It's that learning process. That Monday, Tuesday is about that clarity of learning to where it went wrong.
Okay, Paul, well, plenty of good answers there for the player sport Gilbert Ball coming your way soon. Thank you for that question. Really good insight for the people who want to know a little more about how Test rugby works. Now, all of those things that we just spoke about, I'm sure the Australians will be taking in to this series against South Africa. They learned quite a lot against the Welsh. They learned that they couldn't really defend near their own line against line-out drives, and they're coming up against South Africa. Now, this is a South African team that's without Lua Diaka, Franco Mostert, Stephen Kitsoff, so some serious talent up front. But when you look at that squad, still with 22 World Cup winners in it, it's hard to imagine that the Aussies wouldn't be really gearing up for a similar kind of onslaught, and they're going to have to lift their game there.
You know where they're coming. They are going to go through this Aussie pack. Like Australia are going to have a 6-2 split. There's just no question about it, like to live with them. But more importantly, take the maul defence out of it. It's the discipline defensively to just not give away penalties, to allow South Africa to piggyback themselves up the field into that 22, because no matter how you cut it, it's not something that can be improved quickly, maul defence. There's so many variables to it. I think it's that discipline should be their key factor. And Joe Schmidt's one of the best coaches, and not that I ever have had him, but from what I've heard from the boys, is around the breakdown and getting clarity in and around the breakdown, when the opportunity's on, when the opportunity's off. So this week it needs to be picture perfect. The chop tackle needs to be on. Get them to the deck, give your fetcher an opportunity. If the opportunity's not there, get round the corner, spread, chop tackle again. Be relentless on defence. If the Wallabies can just focus on being relentless on defence and take the opportunities they're given, but that defensive focus, sometimes winning rugby is easier without the ball when you're up against a side that, probably should win. And I think everyone in the world agrees that we expect South Africa to go there and win. But if they can provide that defensive pressure that makes South Africa go, oh, geez, this is actually a bit more than we expected, and make them change tack or overthink things, then they're in the game. But if they give penalties away earlier and South Africa go to that corner, I just don't see there's a way back.
Traditionally, the South Africans haven't travelled well to Australia, and I know with all the guys that are out, but the team that they do have, you'd have to think that it's not going to matter. But I think being in Australia, and I think the confidence that the Australians have got, I know it was against Wales and against Georgia, but to win 3 test matches, especially with that group of how they are and what they've been through under Eddie Jones, they will be having a little bit of confidence. They will have more time that they have spent with with Joe Schmidt being able to implement things within their game, their breakdown area will be massive. I think the discipline points that you bring up, Jip, are massive. I think their number should be around that 5 to 6 penalties. That should be their mindset in terms of not being able to give the South Africans opportunities to be able to get into that line-out more. Because if they do, which they showed against the Welsh were able to go through the front door and be able to score off line-out mauls. And then I think you talked around relentless as well, Jip. That's a really important thing. And I think they just need to be relentless in everything. And are they able to do it? We'll be able to find out after 80 minutes. But they need to be relentless at everything. Everything off the ball, the sacrificial things that you talk about, Jip, are going to be massive. The opportunities that they get inside the 22, if they've got 5, they've got to get 3 out of 5 in terms of that 60-70% success rate. So their margin of error is very, very small because of how good the South African team is. But I think they have shown enough, I think, with what they do have. They do have a kicking game. They're able to kick very, very well off Jake Gordon if they want to go to that contestable game, and they aren't finding space in their attack. They've got enough big boys there. If they have a 6-2 split, can they be able to stay in the fight for 80 minutes? Time will tell, but they do have the athletes to be able to do that. And you'd have to think with Joe Schmidt, with their attack and how prescribed he'll be, they would have to be a lot better in that space with the more time that they have spent post that Wales and Georgian series. So, but even then, I think the South Africans will be far too strong. They're world champions for a reason. I know they don't travel well to Australia, but they've got way too much power, and they should be thinking a 2-0 series in Australia.
But it's also relentless in doing the boring things. Just tackle, get up, tackle, get up, tackle, get up, tackle, get up, clean rucks, kick game, kick chase. You know, they've shown their ability in counter-attack, you know, with Wright at the back and his relationships building in that back three and the opportunities the players in front in terms of the escorts and creating gaps for them. So they've shown enough there, but they just can't get bored of it. You just can't give the Springboks an in. But if they can, in that first 40, just make them think, then they're in the contest, but it's not won, because you know after the break the Springboks will get a tune-up and they'll come out. It's just what they do in that next 10 to 15 minutes. Can they keep making them think, or do they give away an easy penalty early that pins you into the corner and brings their confidence back? And it's brutal. Like, it is David versus Goliath, just in terms of where they're at as a system. We've got back-to-back Rugby World Cup winners versus a group that is with a new coach, a lot of new players. They've run a lot of combinations in the first 3 tests. So, it's a big mountain to climb.
I'm imagining you're going to see Jake Gordon, Noah Lolesio and Wright at fullback.
Hopefully.
That seems like foregone, do you think, Bryn?
Yeah, I think so. And you talk around continuity and being able to, we talked about a lot, man, with Richie Mwanga and Beauden Barrett at the time, and the continuity and not having a 12 for a long period of time. So I think in this cycle, getting the most experience is pretty crucial. And with what we've seen in the early part, Jake Gordon has been consistent around that. They must be thinking that he's going to be the 9 at this stage. And Noah Lolesio is probably the most experienced guy. And to be honest, he's had success this year with the Brumbies. Even though they didn't win it all, he was a part of the most successful Australian team that they've had there. So you'd have to think with him, Tom Wright and Jake Gordon, that'd be the 3 guys that you'd have to think would be pretty pivotal in this first part of the series.
Jake Gordon has to be there without a doubt for me, just because he's such a smart defensive player. Great attacking guy, great kicking game, but the amount of intercepts he gets, the amount of ways he makes attackers just jump a little bit, that split second allows other guys opportunity. He's a very, very key cog, and you can see exactly why Joe Schmidt has him there in that starting line jersey.
I'm imagining the Boks will be relatively straightforward. You know, I know they've got people like Faf who aren't there at the moment, but we can expect a relatively conservative
I think they'll go
selection.
6-2 as well.
Yeah.
They'll know where their weakness is.
Yeah.
They'll go 6-2. I don't know if they'll do the 7-1. I mean, potentially 7-1 in the second test if they do really well through the middle. But I definitely think they'll go 6-2.
The young guys that they blooded in their last test match, like South Africa's in a good spot. Like, probably for us viewers, we don't get to see them a lot because they're not in the Super Rugby anymore. But if you had a look at that game and the athletes, the young guys with enthusiasm that are in that squad, with whoever that 23 is, we're going to see a pretty powerful South African team.
Well, it's no different to the discussion we've had about Rico and Billy Proctor. That nipping at the heels just keeps the senior guy on edge and keeps them at the best.
Particularly the pack that played against Portugal. That was a very new-look pack, wasn't it, in comparison? I mean, the back line was, you know, some regular characters, but that pack...
Athletes.
Yeah.
They had athletes. Like, if we talk around how important the forward packs are right now. But geez, you look at those young guys that are coming through, their flair, their power, and their speed. So you just imagine what they're going to be like in 3 years' time with Tony Brown, like at the helm in this attack. So we've touched on it a lot. It's a scary proposition when we thought that the South Africans would be able to open up themselves to be able to be more of an attacking team. So with the athletes that they have, very scary for what's to come in the next couple of years.
And when we talk motivation, they've won 2 World Cups since they last won a rugby championship. They haven't won one since 2019. You know, I'm imagining that would have them pretty serious about making sure that they can get one this year.
You'd have to think so, but they have had a big theory, and Bryn's talking about bloody new players. You can see their focus is towards the next World Cup and getting guys opportunities and making sure they're not falling short and relying on a ageing group.
But you do want the other trophies as well.
I think that's their main goal, though.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I think they want it.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if you've got 2 in the can now, maybe a rugby championship seems more alluring to throw your stuff into than 3 in a row, is it?
I think they think they're the best team in the world, so I think they think they'll still get it.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly it. And I think
the draw is perfectly set. Australia, New Zealand and South Africa.
Probably the South Africans now, you look at arguably you'd have to think they're the best in the world, right? They're seen as obviously Ireland fans would probably think a little bit different, but you know, they are probably more dominant in terms of what the squad that they've shown and winning World Cup. So their expectation now, if you're probably looking from afar, who do you think is going to win this rugby championship? It's probably genuinely like South Africa, and then you'd have to think the All Blacks would be in and around there as well. So I think it's changing in terms of where we probably see South African rugby and them actually being probably closer to the pinnacle of what the expectation is and of being favourites every single game.
Yeah, we usually do the picks at the end. Let's do the picks right now. All Blacks, Argentina and Wellington. All Blacks. South Africa and Australia, where are they playing? They're playing in Brisbane.
I know, and Aussie have a great record in Brisbane against the All Blacks and South Africa. I just can't pick them. You just don't know what you're going to get, so you have to back the world champions.
Yeah,
South Africa.
Yeah, I'll go South Africa. If Australia win, Ireland are the best team in the world.
Stop trying to fire the comment section.
I'm telling you, if they lose, I'm telling you, Ireland is the number 1 team in the world. And you can put this on. You can put this if you want, Ross. If Australia win, South Africa are not the number 1 team in the world. Ireland are.
Well, they finished strong in that series, that's for sure. Now, Bryn, of course, you've got a game coming up this weekend, don't you? You've got Hawke's Bay, the start of the NPC. You know, you've got the hibiscus flower behind you. You've got James Parsons behind you and in front of you. Yeah, it's a good time to be a North Harbour person right now.
It's a good time to be for me. No, I'm really excited, mate. I'm excited to be back home, and we had a game up north. It was pissing down with rain pretty much the whole time. I thought it was going to be nice and sunny. I think it was the only part of the country that was a bit of rain. So our forwards got into a bit of work, but yeah, really excited. I think it's been great coming back and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of young guys, and I think for us, yeah, we're excited with the opportunity that's going to be able to come. So yeah, looking forward to Sunday, 2:05 in beautiful QBE Stadium. So looking forward to it.
There's some cracking games this weekend. Auckland-Wellington looks like probably the headline act probably for the weekend to the seasons that Wellington have had recently.
Yeah. I mean, it's always a hard one. You look at the pre-season results and you're like, it's not really consistent with how it finished last season. You can never read too much into that, but you have to think Wellington will always love to come up here against Auckland, and Auckland's always a stacked squad, so probably the key fixture. And it's early. It's on Friday night.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether Harry Plummer's out of All Blacks camp back for that game, see what they do with him.
Yeah,
spending some time with them this week. Of course, then there's the Counties Monaco Steelers, the mighty Counties Monaco Steelers.
Against the champions.
Against Taranaki, so that could go well.
Yeah, and Josh Jacob, obviously my rookie of the year last year. I think he is a very key player for Taranaki to go back to back.
Yeah, so as ever, thank you all for watching. Thank you to Bryn Hall, over having just finished training in North Harbour Stadium, found the mural.
Thanks, Bryn.
Right there. Thank you, Bryn. And James Parsons back in studio.
Great to be
Appreciate
back.
it. Tan's looking good.
Thank you.
Excellent analysis as ever, and thank you very much to all of you. Of course, you can get in touch. Aotearoa rugbypod at sky.co.nz, and then get into the YouTube comment section if you're not there and leave us a comment. We'll attempt to have a look at it. And thank you to everyone who helps us put the show together. So, catch you next time. Mā te wā.